He stood by his discovery.
It's hard to believe that someone would have decided to shut himself away in the dark to paint extinct animals. There was absolutely no reason to doubt that these paintings came from an ancient period in time.
Dessaltoula fought hard to clear his name, but his fellow archaeologists were consistently skeptical. Within a few years, he died, here at his family home, not far from Altamira, a disbelieved and a disillusioned man. His supporters said that the accusations of dishonesty had broken his heart and caused his death. But the time would come when Dessaltoula was vindicated.
Over the decades, discovery after discovery was made, in France as well as Spain, that proved beyond doubt that the cave paintings were prehistoric. And then came an even more exciting find. In a cave called Lascaux, a gallery of pictures of breathtaking beauty. As more and more paintings came to light, they revealed prehistoric artists had painted with a confidence and a skill that matched almost anything from the modern world. Pablo Picasso himself said, on first setting eyes on these pictures, "We have learnt nothing." And when experts began dating these paintings, there was another surprise. They found that we'd started creating images comparatively late in our human story. Let me show you what I mean.
Let's imagine that the entire length of time that modern humans have been around on the planet is represented by these steps. People like you and me, the species known as Homo sapiens, we've been around for about 150,000 years. That's where I am now.
Biologically, from then onwards, human beings didn't change. We had exactly the same brain as we have today. And yet, for more than 100,000 years, we didn't create any images.
It wasn't until here, that's about 35,000 years ago, that something began to change.
Archaeologists call it the creative explosion, the moment in time when people first began to create pictures.
So what happened back then? Why did people suddenly decide to start creating images of the world around them?
Experts began searching for an answer, and their first explanation seemed the obvious one. Today, one of the main reasons that we make pictures is to create representations of things in the world around us. Surely, the experts said, thousands of years ago, prehistoric humans also had painted to create representations of things around them. But as more and more cave art was discovered, it became clear that this explanation was wrong. Because today, artists create images of every aspect of the world that they live in. But back then, they created images of mostly one thing. Prehistoric artists were obsessed by animals. And not just any animals, but some in particular. Like horses, bison, and reindeer. But why? What was it about these animals that so fixated the minds of our ancient ancestors? Henri Breuil was a French priest, but he was also the foremost expert on cave art for much of the 20th century. He believed, perhaps not surprisingly, that the paintings were about hunting. Prehistoric artists had painted animals because they believed it would increase the chances of a successful hunt. The theory made sense. It certainly explained why only some animals had been painted. Breuil seemed to have settled the question. But more recently, when archaeologists began to examine the bones of animals that had been hunted and then eaten around the caves, they discovered something puzzling. If people had created these images to improve the chances of a successful hunt, you'd expect them to paint pictures of their quarry. But they didn't. At Altamira, for instance, prehistoric artists had painted oxen. But the bones that had been left were those of deer. At other French sites, they were painting woolly mammoths, but they were eating a wild version of this animal, the goat. All in all, there's very little correlation between the animals depicted in prehistoric art and the animals that feature in the prehistoric diet. So, Breuil's hunting theory had also failed to solve the mystery of why people first started painting. And there was a bigger problem with these theories. The pictures would need to be painted in places where people could see them. Yet something had compelled many prehistoric artists to paint in the narrowest and deepest parts of the caves. Like here in Pêche-Merle in France.
Sometimes images are found on parts of the cave that are almost inaccessible. It's hard to imagine how the artist got in to paint them, let alone imagine how anyone else got in to admire them. I mean, who would have got into a tight spot like this to decorate the ceiling?
This painting isn't just difficult to reach. When you finally get here, it's even harder to understand what these artists were painting. Because, like many other cave images, it doesn't seem to represent anything at all. They're made up of dots and lines, or abstract shapes and patterns. Nothing in the natural world of the prehistoric artist would have looked like this, or this. And very often, these patterns are repeated or scattered across more recognizable images in a seemingly random way.
Here, at the Pêche-Merle caves in France, the prehistoric artist has painted a splendid pair of horses. But look, he's covered the image with a series of spots. It really is hard to see what a pattern of spots has got to do with the world of hunting.
Archaeologists realized they were as far away from understanding cave painting as they had ever been. The obvious explanations, like the paintings having been created to represent things in the world or for hunting, would never unlock the puzzle of these images. Because both of these theories missed the point. Instead of explaining why people were painting images in caves, they should have been trying to solve the mystery of how we got the amazing ability to create images in the first place. To be able to paint a picture of something, you first need to know what a picture is. And how can you know that